still recording.
All right.
So, and Daisy and Kaya are here.
They always pop in.
So that's good.
Right.
So if you hear jingling.
And dogs can get glaucoma and cataracts as well.
They can.
Yeah. So we always want to make sure we ask our vet. One of the big things with dogs, you can usually tell.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, you can see it.
You can see that cloud. And so that's usually a big indicator for our furry friends.
Yeah. Daisy and Daisy's not usually in here, but you can hear her. You can hear her jingling around. So that's okay. If you hear the jingling, it's just Daisy.
It's just the dog.
It's all good.
Playing around.
It's all good.
So I covered visual impairments. The one thing I didn't mention is sometimes people are confused of why do they have to fill 2? And it's the same with hearing impairments. And a lot of that's just because of error. Right. We do see kids, they're just having a bad day that day. Or the nurse was in a hurry and something, they got interrupted and they didn't catch something. So we do like to see 2 fails before we come in and do anything more significant. And so you may even see that if you get something from the school, they've already failed 2 vision screens. And why didn't they tell me after the first one? Because usually we get some, some changes and variables in that. And it is the same for hearing. The process is a little different because we have audiologists that are employed by ASDB, and that's an option for parents. So the nurse then gets a list of all the kids that have failed hearing screens twice, and the audiologist will come and retest them with her more specialized equipment. She tests more of different range, and she also really makes sure that those environmental factors are very, very clear. It's also a parent's option to go to an ENT. And lots of parents choose that, but didn't even know that that was an option. There isn't really any benefit other than...
Candice.
It's bound to happen. We got to keep our editor busy. Sorry, I was trying to catch it in time.
So if the audiologist comes, you can still get you can still go to your ENT. I would actually recommend it because it's good to have that relationship with an ENT if you have a failed screen. And even if the audiologist determines that it's not an educational need, you still may want to have that doctor that you've seen and that we all know how it is after the first appointment. Then you can get appointments, anytime. But getting that initial appointment, if you have 2 fails or even 1 fail, I would say, it's not hard. It's not too horrible to go and figure out which one's covered under your insurance and get established with that doctor so that you can get that rechecked. And they can tell you, I think we're good for 3 years, or we should come back every 6 months. And they'll be able to give you more information on that. So that kind of covers it. And then after that's when we do our referrals, and we, like I was saying, we jump in after the glasses have already been prescribed. We do have a lot of students that don't even really bother to wear their glasses. Some of them, it's really just a protective measure. And that's, a choice that some kids do. Sometimes it helps a little bit, but not a lot. So it really just depends. And so you might say, well, that kid doesn't have a visual impairment. They don't even wear glasses. And sometimes it's in the inner part of the eye. We can't see it. And so correction doesn't make any difference.
Right. So the next question,
I think we covered.
We covered that one, huh? I was like,
I think so.
Yay! So we're on question number 3.
Yeah,
so you've talked about what parents should do with children that their concern might have a hearing or visual impairment. What if, like Joe, who's in a class with children that are visually impaired, or other children have hearing impairments? How can I, as a mom, prepare them or help them out there?
So I think it probably is very similar to what you guys have been talking about with the understanding that there's just, everybody has different eyes, everybody has different hair, everybody has different ears, everybody has, so the everybody has different kind of goes along with hearing and visual impairments as well. The big thing, I think, is, like you were saying, Joe, the technology for our students with visual impairments is pretty extensive. Most of our students that we come across have some usable vision, and we do try to utilize that. So we maximize that as well as teach them skills for if they don't want to use their vision, if it's too taxing. And that's where Braille comes in. But when they do want to look at things, they have cameras and enlargers and handheld ones and ones that stand on tripods, and it's extensive. And the biggest thing would be to reinforce that these are tools, just like your laptop is a tool. Sometimes you play games on your iPad, but there's also things that are tools on there. I can use a calculator on my phone. I can call people on my phone. I can also play a game on my phone. These kids don't have games on these devices. So understanding that this is a tool and it's an important tool, that it's really important to not touch it and to just say, hey, I want to look at that. And they're usually more than happy if they have a moment to share that.
To share with them.
But they have to ask first. And I think that kind of goes along with just general classroom etiquette. But
Life's etiquette.
Yes, exactly. But it's so enticing for kids to want to touch some of these devices. And so our kids love to share them. So asking about them and saying, hey, can you show me how that works? They want to see themselves on the camera, taking a few minutes to do that in the classroom, and then that way all the kids are kind of like, okay, we're done with that, we saw it, we know what it does now.
Familiarizes them with,
and once, I mean, like, you know, I just used, like you talked about, we've had them here now for 2 years, and, you know, at first it was like, really like, oh, this is cool, like, what is this for, and how are you using this, and how are you using this? And the more that we expose these kids to all the diversity that's happening on the campus, the more they're just like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Oh yeah, I know what that is. But it also sparks that curiosity, like with the American Sign Language, with all of our kids.
Right.
There are so many kids now that are so interested in learning the sign language because they find that really valuable for them to be able to communicate with their peers. And so they're like, it's just like, to them, another, like learning Spanish.
It totally is just another language.
It's fantastic.
And it's a great language to learn because for kids that don't want to conjugate verbs or not good at that, it's a great language, and it's
expressive.
It's expressive. It's kinetic, right? It's kinetic learning. You're using your body and stuff like that. For Jillian, my 10-year-old with Down syndrome, ASL was her first language, and so I used to always fill out on the paperwork what their first language was. ASL. Yeah, I know, but I don't do that anymore.
So having an interpreter in the classroom is another whole thing, because it's not technology, it's not an inanimate thing, it's a real live person. Is it an adult that you can ask questions? Who are they? The kids have a lot of questions about that. And so as a parent, I would say, let them ask their questions. They can always ask. But an interpreter is there specifically for that communication. So the best thing to teach your children is if there's an interpreter, and that means that then there's probably a deaf or more than one deaf student in the classroom. If they want to communicate with that student, it's really a good thing to also get the attention of the interpreter. And our students they're pretty good about also, kind of tapping them and saying, hey, I want to talk to this kid, come and help me. But that's just an etiquette thing that they can learn, is taking the time to pause after they've said what they want to say. Because kids are, and the interpreter's trying to keep up. And they're trying to then get that information to the child.
What a great skill!
And so that stop and wait. Let them say what they're getting. Oh, and then let the other student answer. Because you think, oh, I just waited, now I can talk again.
Right.
Let them talk, and then you'll get a voice that's not that student's voice, it's the interpreter's voice. So that is a skill that takes a long time. I'm still getting used to that.
Me too.
And it takes a lot of patience. So it's actually a really good thing to practice.
Right.
And in any type of translation situation, whether it's Spanish or ASL or whatever language, is that you gotta wait for that person to translate what you just said. You don't have to talk slower or faster or louder or whatever. Just that pause makes all the difference for them to be able to catch up and give that person time to then answer the question.
Right.
And to not be scared of interacting with
Right.
that student because they have another person that they have
Right.
to go through. Because some of them do, read some lips. I mean, our littles don't, not yet, but it's amazing how much they do pick up.
Right.
So you do still want to talk to the person that's
Facing
deaf.
them.
Even though you're really, the interpreter's the one that's listening to you, because you want to give them your full attention and your straight face so that they can see your facial expression and they can see what the gist of what you're saying, and then they get the full picture from the interpreter.
Right. Right.
So all those little things are just good practicing. Say, hey, let's do this. Let's practice together. You have a deaf friend in your classroom. Yay! Let's practice.
Well, and that builds into what we do a lot with our social emotional teaching.
Yes.
Is really having kids practice, like giving eye contact
Right.
with people.
Right.
Like using
good. This
the
is the
pause,
best school.
doing those types of so
Right.
it becomes more of a natural
Well, and especially
process.
because of technology today, kids aren't talking face to face as much,
Yep.
and so they need that instruction. They're not naturally learning that. I did notice when we were watching Ethan read the books the other day. I liked hearing you model. The kids were raising their hands and being all patient and wanting to get chosen. I really liked how you modeled how to get the attention of somebody who is visually impaired.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I learned that once I started going to conferences. I mean, in my classes, I didn't understand that because my teachers were sighted, and some of them were low vision, but we had small classes. We didn't have a problem with this, and I went to conferences, and I'm like, I'm hearing people go, "Hi, my name is," and I have a question, and you kind of just have to learn to blurt it out because they don't see all the hands raised.
Right.
So they have no idea who to call on.
Yeah.
And Ethan was in that situation. He probably hadn't been in that situation before to have to call on people. So I kind of thought, this is a good time to teach the whole class. And they did such a great job.
They did.
I watched the video over again, and I couldn't believe how... And I have a second question. They were getting more specific even. They were taking what I said and, they just ran with it. And I think it's just a really nice skill to have because you don't know who's in the audience. And it's nice for podcasts.
Right.
If you can't see who's in the panel, and I want to know who was that talking. I think it was this expert or whatever.
Right.
I can't see them, so I kind of remember their voice. And when they say, oh, this is Dr. So and so talking. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It is.
It's cool.
It's
cool.
It's a good strategy.
It's a good strategy.
Right. Well, I think we're going to have Danielle back because I think our time is just about
There's
up.
a lot of stuff
There
for us
is,
to
and
chat
it's
about.
so neat because it's so neat all this inclusion that's going on, and how it's the adults that have the issue with it. The kids just flow right into it. It's going to be so exciting to watch the middle school as all these kids move up. We've been talking about that and the opportunities that the middle school is going to provide for them, and we're going to help the middle school provide for them.
because that's the next step.
Exactly.
Is to transition them up and continue the progress and really what the students are now demanding that their education look like.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because they're their own best advocate, and it's so awesome to be able to see that now with them.
Yeah.
They know how they learn best, and they're going to continue to advocate for themselves on what is best for them.
Exactly.
So it's super exciting.
It's
to
really
see.
cool.
Yeah.
So
thanks for being on with
yeah,
us.
thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks for
This is
being
so
one more
informative.
bite out of the elephant in education,
Right.
and so it's been really cool. I really want to have you back. I think that
great.
I think it would be good.
And if people have questions too, I'd be more than happy to
Exactly.
answer questions, and we can bring on a expert on ASL or deaf or hard
Right.
of hearing students as well.
Definitely.
Because that's my specialty is VI, but we have lots of people who could speak to the audiology side of it and more specific about. I had no idea how bad Q-tips were until I met an audiologist. They're
true.
really horrible.
Do that. So do that. Leave your comments below,
Yeah.
and we'll make sure they get to Danielle. Make sure you like our videos. Make sure you share them, and by all means follow us. And we're on Facebook and Instagram, and then nevereasyalwaysgood.com.
Yep, great
So-
things happening.
so-
So
and-
stay tuned.
So, I was going to say this week is World Down Syndrome Day, but when you guys see this, it would be last
It'll
week.
be past.
I know, it's sad. Crazy socks.
But we'll be
anyways,
celebrating it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we will.
Successful.
Yes.
We'll have to take some pictures and post it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
we'll do that.
okay, well,
Okay.
thanks again, Danielle.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.